All right, welcome back to the DJVonFire podcast. I'm David Joshua Vales. Producing, as always, is Jonathan Andrew Vales. I'm acting like we're starting a new podcast, but we just have I don't mean just have, but we are continuing our talk with Jeremiah David DeCenzo here from last week. So welcome back, technically. But for all those paying attention, this is just continuation of our podcast from last week. So we just took a pause, and so we're right back at it recording. Last week we got to know you, and I thought it was important because that's the whole goal, is to get to know people of second place first and foremost. So you had a lot we unwrapped there, but we talked about your family and your relationships with siblings and kind of what you're heading on doing because you're graduating very soon.
Yeah.
And then your love of music is kind of where we ended up. Your love of singing, maybe specifically. Do you play the key? Do you like?
Yeah. So I grew up playing the piano. That was the instrument we were all forced to learn.
Okay.
That's really all I play. But yeah, in terms of music I make, it's piano and singing. But I just love music in general.
Okay. And now, do you have a title at second place? Like, what are you? Because you lead worship. Your brother does as well. Are you like co-worship leaders?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, I had an official title. After that, not as much. So I was technically the Saturday night worship coordinator. So I was underneath Micah, as Micah's the overall music guy. But I was just leading those services. That was kind of my baby. If any of you came or remember them, I loved them. They were so great. We were talking about before we started. Just like the energy that Saturday nights brought. So that was really my focus. And then now that's starting to shift into kind of what I went to school for, kind of being more involved in the executive planning of things that are happening, as well as youth group. And I'm still doing worship, but it's more so just like anybody else that's volunteering to sing.
Yeah. You've been friends with my daughter for a while. Couple of years.
Yes.
You guys, can we say, I don't know, I can't say, but like you went to Paris with Marisa, my wife, and your aunt.
Yeah.
Went and had an amazing time.
It was awesome.
I want to move there?
Oh my gosh, Annalise is like on a phase currently of trying to get there. She's like talking about doing a gap year or studying abroad or something, and she's been looking at apartments in Paris. She's trying to convince me to go with her for a little bit, and I was like, you got to be careful because I really will. I absolutely loved it. It was beautiful. The food was amazing. Everything. There was a lot of hype going into it, and I felt like every bit of it was met, which is saying something because I think Paris is one of those things where
I have a problem because I don't have any desire to go to anywhere.
Really?
Like if I had to go someplace, it'd be Australia, and I don't even know why. And the more you hear about the animals,
I was gonna say Australia. That's the one place that scares me because of the wildlife there,
like the snakes and the. So, but Europe is like, then my wife, she said it was unbelievable, and Kaylee obviously loved it, and she enjoyed the trip so much. But Kaylee's the one that like talked to you about kind of the quotes I was doing last year, and the messages, and then I think it was literally the first week of March or end of February. She's like, hey, can you add Jeremiah onto the messages? So what was it? How did you find out about him? Why did it come up? And then
I think it was in March, if I remember correctly, like towards the beginning of March. And because it was before pandemic hit. And we were at Caleb Smith's house, and I think Kate was there, and Kaylee, we were just hanging out, talking, catching up, whatever. And she just had brought him up. I think the quote from that day she had brought up, shared it, impacted her in some way. And I was like, hold on a second, like what are you talking about with this? And she kind of explained to me what you were doing, because I'm not on Facebook, and I think that's how you initially instigated everything. So like I have an account, but for years I've just got rid of that.
It's another podcast.
Yes.
We're only going to do,
so I had never really heard about it, but my dad had been involved. He just hadn't brought it up. And so she was explaining what you were doing, and I was like, that sounds right up my alley. I love like the idea of self-improvement slash just being motivated on a consistent basis
Mhm.
to pursue the things that I need to do, because I love getting things done. I'm a very like task oriented person, but when I fall off hard. And when she was explaining it, I was like, that sounds just like a really solid thing. And it reminded me of the soul workouts that my dad does, which when he is in the groove of doing those, I think they are coming back potentially very soon. That was like just like a very helpful thing for me to regularly spend time with God and getting into scripture, because it was a text message every day. And I was like, why not throw something else in? And so she ended up messaging you. I think Kate and Caleb at the time did as well. I don't know how far they went with it, but yeah, that's how I found out about it initially.
Um, and you stayed. I tried to catch you up because you started in March, and I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
just pick you up from there. I wanted you to like see the mindset and the plan from the very beginning, because it was very simple. And now that we're at like halfway through January, by the time this plays, we might be done with January. But it started out very simple, just talking about New Year's resolutions and setting new goals, and then trying to figure out how do you stick to your goals and how you keep them very minimal. But then at the end of each month, I would throw a new challenge at you. And it's not like I chose a challenge. I sometimes would suggest, here's what I'm doing the next month. So like at the end of January last year, I said, all I'm going to try to do is be on the elliptical or be on the treadmill for 30 minutes each day. Like that was my
Yeah.
only goal I had from January to February. And then like February was coming to the end, and then I challenged with a new challenge. And so I try to catch you up by sending you like 4 a day. So I didn't even know if you'd be reading 4 a day, because one a day is really kind of ideal, I think, because you have more time yourself to think about it. But
Yeah.
and there was a day that I had forgotten to send them, and you're like, I'm ready for 4 more whenever you're ready. It was like the end of the day or like in the afternoon, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about Jeremiah. And there's a little group of you that were trying to catch up. So
Yeah.
so yeah, here's your next 4, and then like you eventually caught up by the end of March. But um, what did you start to glean from them, or was it literally just that motivation a day? It was like, here's my daily reminder. Here's my daily reminder.
Yeah.
Would you set up challenges if you didn't have me saying what are you going to do the next month? Do you think you still would have, or no? It was kind of a good
Yeah. So
little prod.
I think the initial way I interacted with them was, this is just like good like motivation, get me thinking about like what are the areas of my life, because I think you intentionally, I'm assuming, hit on those like mind, body, soul, like emotions, like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of like encapsulate all of those throughout in different ways in those quotes. And it just started like getting my brain thinking about like what are the areas of my life, what are the things I'm doing to like make myself better, be a better person. And I was realizing I'm not doing that like that much. Like I have a lot of just like wasted space in
Mm-hmm.
terms of my time. And so I would say initially it was me figuring out what are the areas I want to focus on. I would not have been doing challenges like for myself each month had I not had them. But I was started thinking, okay, I want to work out more regularly, because I'd worked out for a while through high school with Jordan Mitchell, and I loved it. And it was great because I had like a close place to go to, and other people were doing it with me. And then when that fell off and I stopped doing that, I just like had pretty much stopped working out
Mm-hmm.
like entirely. And I hated running. I hated doing pretty much anything. And it wasn't like I was like unhealthy. I live a pretty active lifestyle as it
Right.
is,
Yeah.
but I miss like pushing myself, like lifting and like doing things that are just like I know are just gonna make me better. And uh, the winter, like 2019 into 2020, like was super rough for me mentally. I was just very, and winters generally are. This is like the first winter that I would say I haven't noticed like a significant decrease in my like mental stability,
Mm-hmm.
just like dealing with like depression and anxiety during those times. And so going into 2020 was just like not great. And that's when like when I fall off hard. And so I like was not doing anything to like combat that. And so I would say in a lot of ways, initially it was like, okay, I need to like get out of this rut of how I'm living life just overall, and less focused on I need to like check all these boxes, but more so inherently think about the way I'm living my life. So that was kind of the initial one. I can like keep explaining, but I don't know what you think your thoughts on that are.
No, that's good. I mean, that's kind of like what I'm listening to here. And today I was writing something down, and so it was, we have more conversations with ourselves than anybody else, and the thing is we can control that. I said that there's usually two voices that have a conversation, and if you're like you're super busy, because obviously I was super busy back then, and you're like you had a lot of, what did you call it, downtime, fluff time?
Yes, free time
Free
or
time,
like yeah. I don't even
didn't
remember what I
utilize
said.
it very well. And so sometimes we say, well, we're just too busy. But if you really like break it down, there's a lot of fluff in there that you can. But mine was even like, okay, so when are these conversations happening? I'm like, when the alarm goes off and I'm staring at the ceiling, when I'm brushing my teeth, when I'm getting dressed for the day, when I'm filling up my water bottles for the morning, like when I'm driving in my car, like when I'm walking into the building. Like these are all times that I have conversations in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I just at least start taking control of those conversations in my head? So this is the first time I'm like talking about this because I literally just wrote it down today. But that's ultimately how it all started. It was like, let's just have good conversations let's take control of that. If you have two voices in your head, this is what I wrote. There's no reason why you can't have more voices in your head. You can have limitless voices. So what I feel like I did was I put a mediator in there. It's like, here's option A, here's option B, which is always like, there's his side, and then there's this side. And then it's like, well, what's the third one? It's like, well, it's the truth. So I feel like what last year looking back was, okay, I have this opinion of myself, which probably put me in the rut. And then there's this version of me that's talking. And then like, let's put one in the middle that can like mediate that. So, and so that's when you're like, well, this year, if you haven't listened to his first podcast from last week, there'll be a link somewhere in the video at the end. Go back and watch it because you talked about like just doing like yoga and meditation with your sister on a more regular.
Yeah, I don't know if we got that recorded, but yeah, I've been doing that more so lately. Yeah.
And so what we really want to hit now, and I don't want you to turn this off. We want to talk about meditation a little bit. And mine was more like meditation and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of talked to you this a little bit off camera, but like mine, when I think of meditation, I think of prayer. Now, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, so meditation was taboo. Meditation was, oh, that's new age. You shouldn't meditate. So for a long time, I did meditate, and now we get to a point where like, okay, I feel like I need to meditate, and then it's like, well, what is meditation? Is it prayer? Is it separate from prayer? And so my take was, in this whole past year, is like prayer and meditation is how I wraps it up.
Yeah.
Describe your definition of meditation.
A little bit. Yeah. So I would say growing up, very similar, like taboo. Like even when I started doing yoga, like not even like super consistently, but Lisa and I did a like 30-day like program, yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. I love her. During quarantine, and that was kind of the first time that I'd done like random videos with her here and there, but it was the first time I'd really like gotten into like the world of yoga, and it just like yoga in general, but also meditation was just very taboo growing up. It was kind of the same idea of this is like not of God. And my I think this was just kind of a theme for me last year in general, was that I think God is literally just in everything, and there are obviously things that like we need to like be aware of that are not good for us and all that, but in my experience, and that's all I can really speak to, I noticed that in like the videos that we were doing, there was a lot of just like sitting and breathing before you even got into like doing core work or doing legs or whatever you were going to do in that video. And it's during that time where like she's saying things like, try to like quiet yourself, try to like focus on your breathing. Like if you have thoughts flying through your mind, like acknowledge them and like let them move on, or like say thank you to yourself or to like whatever for like showing up today. And like those are the moments where I'm like, I can bring God into this conversation consciously. And to me, I feel very comfortable doing something like that, because it's like when I'm saying like, thank you that like to God that I'm able to even show up and like do a 30-minute yoga video, like that my body is healthy enough to do that, that my schedule is free enough to be able to do that. Like, to me, it's integrating God into everything you do. And so but I don't view the meditation as much of a like, I need to sit and be quiet and like completely think about myself and my own thoughts and everything that's happening. But if I say, God, these are the things I'm thinking right now, these are the things I'm stressed about right now, and I just need to like let you know, it is so slight of a shift, but it's enough to where you're just building that relationship even more.
Yeah.
And I think it's, the lines are just so blurred between like prayer, meditation, and just like removing God from the picture. But for me, it's like that's the like the work of being able to say, God needs to be in everything I do. Yeah.
So throughout the year, I would throw out there, I encourage people to take a journal, to keep a journal. Do you keep a journal? You don't have to go into detail, but no.
I've been trying more.
Okay.
That's this year's focus a little bit more.
But then I throw out there, try to meditate more, and I would always say meditate/pray, whichever one you can or felt drawn. But we never really like laid out what meditation was. So like what you just described is kind of like exactly what it turned into me. In January, my voice is breaking. In January, I started out with an app called Calm.
Mm-hmm.
There's another app called Headspace, and it's kind of like meditation. That's like
I've used Headspace before.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So, did you find or most of your time meditating? Did you find any success using apps or no? No. Okay. Though I went through a 30-day, because to me it's, and what the whole year was like commit to 30 days of, you could do anything for 30 days. And so if at the end of 30 days you started a new habit, great. If you get to the end of 30 days, you're like, that's not for me, so be it. So in January, I wanted to make it 30 days, so I did like the app Calm, and it literally was like 30 days to learn how to meditate. And so some nights I didn't want to listen to it, some days, and I did. I mean, I still did it, but because I liked seeing the check mark on the calendar as the thing like gives you a new one, you like being able to check it out. But it came to be like that's what it's about. It's just, it's okay to have people think I can't meditate. Like, what does that mean? It means I think about other things. Well, perfect. That's actually what it is that you're supposed to. Now, the challenge we threw down in December to close it out was it was the 25 days of Christmas, and so we were supposed to add a minute on every day. So December 1st, we were going to meditate for 1 minute, and then 2 minutes December 2nd, and then like by Christmas, 25 minutes of meditation. So I'll let you talk about how that went first.
So for that, I was more intentional of like, that was kind of removed. I wasn't really doing yoga much last month. Because the thing we did is at the beginning of each year. And the meditation for that challenge, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like sit and just try to be quiet for a minute, and then 2 minutes and 3 minutes. And first week was solid, and then I don't even remember what happened, and I just like, it left my radar. And then you ended up saying something. I don't even remember. I was at your house for some reason, and you were like, doing this, and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're doing that. And I was like, okay. And so for me, the power of it, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, but like I was that same mindset of I can't be quiet and still for that long. We'd done a little bit of that kind of stuff with the soul workouts of just like practicing the discipline of silence. And I think the most I've ever done is actually like 2 hours, which was for a class, and it was powerful. I would recommend it to anybody that can. Like, I think we were supposed to do 4 for that assignment, and I was like, I did not make it. But we had to like just like be quiet, and we could only have like a journal and a Bible, and that was pretty much my first like introduction to just like silence. And it's terrifying for me, and I don't know if other people can relate to that, but the moment I'm quiet, that's when everything surfaces, and I suddenly like can't ignore the like problems. I can't like pretend that like things are fine, or that I'm not like stressed or really sad about something or angry about something. Um, and I use busyness to push those things away subconsciously, I think, because as long as I'm constantly doing something, if I have music playing, if I'm watching a video right before I go to bed, or I'm doing this, then it's like I can just fade away, wake up, and repeat it. And I think you initially said something, because we kind of revisited the concept at Reboot in February of last year with the students, and you had said something about like the importance of being bored and just like
Yeah, so I read, I had it because I sent it to my kids, and then Kaylee sent it to you right away.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's awesome.
It's insane. Yeah. And
it's okay to be bored.
Right. And that like hit me, because I was like, I was actually dog sitting for the Boomsmas, which if you watched Matt's episode. And so I was in a house like alone when I got that from Kaylee. And I was like, I have no excuse. My house is always insane. If you've ever been there, you know it's very loud constantly. And I was like, I'm just gonna like sit for a few minutes. I'm not gonna watch this Netflix show that I've been binging for the past 3 hours. And I was like, that was when I think I really realized I'm using this busyness as an excuse or as a way to avoid things. And that was still kind of when I was like still in that rut. And so then getting back to kind of the challenge, by December, I was familiar enough with my habits as just a person, and understanding that it wasn't going to be easy, but I knew that it was important for me, because if I don't get quiet, I will literally never address those things that are happening. And then that's when I start slipping into these like unhealthy places of, I don't even know what's happening at this point, because I've pushed everything down for so long that it could literally be like any of these like 50 things that have happened over the past year.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm glad you shared all that. It's personal, but it's so many people that are going to hear this that like needed to hear that. So I thank you for that, and the importance of it. And one of the biggest things I'm trying to promote is like, we call it taking up your cross daily. Is like, if you get so busy that you can't do it for weeks, and then you try it again, and it's going to be painful, or you're going to struggle with it because it's so pent up because you didn't take the time each day. So to me, it's very important, to the best of your ability, to find time to meditate, to get quiet, to be with your own thoughts, and hear them out. Even if it's you're hearing the refrigerator and you're hearing the dog bark next door, and go ahead and like listen to the dog barking next door. That's fine, because eventually like you just start to get random thoughts pop in your head. One of the biggest things that kept me motivated, and you could say that is for you, like if it was something that I said I can't do it last year, then that was a reason why I needed to do it. Mm-hmm. So when I said at the beginning of January, like, I can't meditate, it's too hard, like I can't stay quiet, then I'm like, that's why I have to try this and do this. And if you can string the days together, again, I said 30 days together, I would be shocked if you weren't somehow changed by the experience of the 30 days of, and we're not saying go, because I made it about 20, by the time I had 20 minutes in December, on December 20th, I was falling asleep. Mm-hmm. Which isn't a bad way to go to bed. It's like, it's not a bad way to like at the end of your day, I'm going to try to meditate and you fall asleep. I heard someone say that, like, I can't read the Bible when I go to bed or at nighttime because I always fall asleep. Like, what better way to fall asleep?
I was thinking about that too, because my mom has, and a lot of people in my family actually have just like struggled with being able to fall asleep at night a lot of the time, or they'll wake up in the middle of the night. And I was thinking about that because I fell asleep while I was meditating one of the times, and I was like, I felt really guilty at first, and I was like, that's such a blessing that even like my body is able to do that, that I just like kind of shifted my perspective on kind of that concept, because it's like being able to fall asleep is a blessing in a lot of ways, and I think if being able to quiet down and listen and like be able, if that helps with it, then
we're going to get into the quotes for this week, but I put it in a stretching regimen at the end of my day, and then again, the thing I like about having YouTube as my primary is like you go on there, find any kind of meditation. If you want to talk about like body awareness, like as you fall asleep, it'll be like think about your toes, think about your feet. Like sometimes I don't even make it up to like past my knee before I fall asleep, and I wake up and it's like 2.5 hours into the listening to it. I'm like, wow, that was good, good way to fall asleep. And so just challenge you. There's so many different ways to do it. While you're doing yoga, just thinking about your breathing is how you do it. If you're like, I can't last 5 minutes, well, think about 1 minute breathing. Think about 1 minute of the noise you hear. Think about 1 minute about why you're so busy. Think about, and you've strung 5 minutes of meditating together.
And what I would say to anybody that's like still hung up on the like, is this like too new agey, or like, is this too about me focused and like me power to like overcome these things, is like I would challenge you to say, how can you integrate your faith not only in this area but into everything you do, and are you putting God in a box that he doesn't need to be in? Because I started to quickly realize that it's easier to be quiet and just talk to myself than it is to be honest and vulnerable with God about like, I'm actually feeling this and I'm actually upset. And so being like, oh, getting quiet and like trying to do things is like not what God wants me to do, is a nice excuse to not have to be vulnerable and like bring things before God. And I all that to say, I would just say like figure out how you can integrate God into those things. Because even when you're like talking about like body awareness, or you're talking about like the thoughts that are coming into your mind, like he's in everything. He's in all of that. We're created in the image of God. And so like, I don't know, I just see so much more opportunity to like connect with that than to disconnect without it.
Man, we could do a third podcast. The thing was, we'll just stick to 2 because that's what I said. But I mentioned how meditation and prayer I've put together, and it's because of that. Just kind of like how you summarized that. Like gratitude was a big part. I mean, that could be a whole nother podcast on gratitude. But as you're getting quiet and then like. Okay,
because that's when he speaks.
Yes.
That's you got to give him the you have to stop talking in order for God to talk. You can't be shouting over each other. He's not going to do it. Okay.
No, that's great. For real. That's awesome. Thanks. I'm going to read through these quotes that I kind of sent you, and they might be in out of order, so you kind of just like listen for the ones you want to. You can pop in on all these or none of these. Obviously, we don't want to keep you too long. But we'll see. So the first quote: the more we think about, talk about, and write about something happening, we improve the probability of that thing happening.
Yes. I won't say a ton on this one, but for me, I'm socially motivated. And so, like I was saying, when I worked out with people, when I do a program with Annalise, or I'm doing text messages with a group of other people, I am talking about it more. It's coming up in conversation more, and it's just pulled out of my subconscious and into my conscious mind, like you were saying in your message. Like it happens because I have all these reminders like built into my life. Basically, that's kind of how I viewed that one.
Everything counts was this quote, and it was more about if you had a bad breakfast, like that's okay. Just have a good lunch and a good dinner. That counts. If you couldn't exercise, like have an official, like here's where I was on the treadmill for 30 minutes. You mentioned having an active lifestyle. Like if you were working, a job where you're carrying things up and down and blah, 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 like that counts as being part of your physical, working on your physical part.
Yeah. When you sent that one, I remembered that one because it stuck out to me the first time I read it. And as someone who tends to be leaning perfectionist, I'm very like weirdly perfectionist, but that was freeing to say, and it was also a little bit like convicting, because I used that excuse again to say, oh, well, I'm doing Bible in a year. I missed 3 days. And so now, like, my day today doesn't count. Like, that's not enough. And when you take that excuse away and say, like, literally, if all you can do is read a verse today, that counts. If all you can do, if you're trying to like read a book, all you can do is read a sentence, like that counts. And we're wanting to improve and we're wanting to push ourselves, but at the end of the day, if those goals and that motivation is hindering you from doing anything at all, then it's not helpful. And so that one changed the way I was even interacting with your messages, because I was like beating myself up like, oh, I'm not hitting these mile markers that I feel like I should be, but does that change the fact that I'm still improving? No.
Yeah, that one's January 23rd. So I try to put that at, they say 21 days makes a habit. So I put it right at that end of where like people did make the habit or had made it or whatever. It's not quite scientifically true, but it's for another podcast too. But I thought it was important. And
yeah.
The next one though that I said, it doesn't really matter. So one I say everything counts, and I said it doesn't really matter. But that was more about like the guy cutting you off in the road. Like at the end of the day, does that really matter? Like it might get you upset, but like why are you getting upset? You have no idea what's going on in that guy's car, why he's speeding. You don't know if someone passed away or whatever. Like start thinking of it as that aspect rather than this is just some jerk that cut me off that in this fancy car. Like if you change your perspective, it changes it a lot. A healthy body makes a healthy mind.
Yeah. I think for me, at least this winter, that has been the game changer for me. I went on a run today with Annalise. Like I would have never run in the cold. And like I started recognizing the connection between my depression and my lack of physical activity, and realizing that the more regularly I'm building this into my schedule and not just like, oh, I'm not feeling good today, so now I need to like go do something when I have the least motivation I could ever have to go do something. Like once I recognize that and prioritize that regular integration of physical activity, I was like, oh, my mind is so much clearer, or I'm like not getting as like stressed out about things. It's all these Canvas classes are getting posted yesterday. I'm like reading syllabuses and getting stressed out, but I'm like, okay, like it is what it is. I'm gonna go run and figure it out. And like it doesn't solve everything, but it helps.
Yeah. Sometimes it just changes perspective.
Yeah.
Some of you need to like rewind and like take some notes for yourselves. So I think that's important. I haven't said that in a podcast yet, but I think you can go back and hear some of these quotes and like put them to good use for yourself. Success. Oh well, this is a good one. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
So this one, and I think it might be the next one. Is the next one about habits as well?
Replace old habits of reaction with new habits of perspective.
So when I read these, when you sent them to me, I was reminded of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I don't know if you ended up reading it last year.
Yes.
But I had to read that for a class, my leadership class, and immediately I got like 2 chapters in and I texted you and I said, this book is right up your alley. It goes with everything you've been talking about this year. And that book, if you have heard about it or you've seen it around and you've questioned picking it up, would 100% recommend. I think he does an amazing job of like, they're short chapters, but he just talks about the practical ways of integrating new things into your daily routine and how to make habits stick. It was just like amazing. So sorry, read that first quote again out of those two, would you? I just want
Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm.
Yeah. So that kind of goes with the like everything counts one in my mind of you have to be okay with the fact that you're not going to meet your expectations.
Your old mind, here's what I wrote, your old mind might get stuck on all the things you didn't accomplish, but your new mind can look back and see all the success you had in January. So
that it's powerful. I think that's one of the hardest things for us to do though as humans is like for some reason, as soon as failure comes, our like gut reaction is just like shutting down, and like it completely darkens like our mood about everything. And so having to like reframe that mindset of failure into like, I have to have this in order to like improve, so difficult. And I'm still figuring out how to do that in a productive way.
That's why I'm going through this again. So if anybody is interested, you can email me. My email's in there, or follow Instagram at DJVonFire. Each day I put up the new one, but I'd be happy to just text it to you if you email me. But it's just nice to have those daily reminders. And now this is the second time both of us are going through it, and it's like a new thing pops up each day. And again, it's just a nice way to kick off your day, or whenever you can get around to reading it, and be like, okay, it's a good reminder. And again, they came to me just randomly, but like I try to spread them out so you can work on your physical, your mental, your emotional, your spiritual as well. Do it over and over again until it becomes part of who you are. To set up those habits.
Yeah, that's the dirty work of like, you just have to do it at the end of the day, and the repetition is the game changer. Like I said, like with the exercise specifically, and I did the same thing with reading last year. That was probably the other area that I saw like the most improvement for myself. And it wasn't until October I texted you, like my challenge was to read a book, because I had never read for fun in all of my 4 years of college. I'd never read a book for fun while I was in school, and I was like, I hate that, because I love reading.
Yeah.
But the second I get into school, I start feeling guilty, because like I feel like I should be doing homework, I should be doing these other things, whatever, and I like make all the excuses. And I was like, I'm going to read, and I made it like that, doing this over and over and over again. Of I'm going to just like push through. And can you do this? I think I ended up reading 20 books from October to December, because I was like, I just started making that, like when I get in the car, I'm putting on an audiobook, or when I'm at home and I want to scroll through social media, I'm going to pick up the book I want to read. And it's like all those, that was where I really trimmed up my time of like the things that I'm like wasting away on, because I have a like 30-minute commute to school, and I was spending way too much time on social media when I literally hated it. I still hate it, but like it's like I started recognizing all these things that like I really didn't want in my life, and I was like, okay, I'm reading for literally every one of those things.
See, reading could be a whole nother podcast, because it's you don't know what you got till it's gone, but it's the reverse as well. Like you think social media is what you want to be doing, and then you start reading, and you start growing, and you start learning, and you start new habits, and you're like, what have I been doing? Did you have that moment like, what have I been doing up until this point?
And you're like, why do I have no time to do all these things that like everybody else is doing? Like I see those people that are reading these books, or that they listen to all this music. I love listening to music and like getting to hear a bunch of different stuff, but like I'm like always doing all these other random things that I don't have to be doing.
20 books. You're going to have to send me a list. You didn't tell me you had read that many. That's awesome. All right, a few more. Let's see if we can make it through. We got like 3 minutes. Do it over and over again until it becomes part of who you are. So what I was going to say is it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. The key to habits is finding a ritual and a specific time you're going to do things. If you just say, I'll start tomorrow, you'll be saying that for the rest of your life. Make a plan, write it down, follow it. Why are you not the most important person in your life? It's pretty good. Roger that was the next one.
Yes.
Roger that stuck with me. Did it get you through any tough times or not?
I loved that, and It's Day One. Those were the two I feel like you kept bringing back throughout the whole year. And the phrase itself wasn't like in my mind necessarily, but that attitude of all these things are happening that are out of my control is what it is. Recognize it. Don't ignore it. Like get quiet. Think about like how that's affecting you, but say, okay, what can I control? Work on that. Everything else, roger that. I got it, but I can't do anything about it. So, yeah, I love that one. And I think it was powerful as you kept bringing it up over and over and over again, because you start realizing all the different aspects and how that kind of fits into kind of everything you're doing, of like there's so much that is going to be flying out of control through everything that you're doing, and you have to be able to just say hands up.
If you don't fix yourself, it'll trickle onto others. So a big part thing that I promoted was the ripple effect, on how you could be like, woe is me, I don't have time today, I'm too busy, but that's having an effect on all of your family, all the siblings you mentioned that you have relationships with. And if you're not able to be the best you can be, that's another quote, but like in that moment, that's re-affecting those relationships with all the people that you love, number one, right? And it's not good for yourself originally, but then like, what can you do to affect the people around you that then they can affect the people around them? And then so the ripple effect is changing lives with people you'll never see. So
yeah, I love that one.
It started with that one. And then the last one of January, our goal is to find holiness in what appears to be unholy situations.
I forgot about that one.
It says, as we wrap up January, how has it gone? 80% of New Year's resolutions fail. Are you a statistic? Well, we've got a new month on the horizon. And then it just goes about finding the good in everything.
Yeah.
It says, as far as this quote, there's a life lesson in every situation.
Yeah.
So no matter what, like if you felt like the end of the month didn't finish how you wanted to, there's a lesson in that. And so I've tried to be more aware of whatever I'm going through, that it happens for a reason. And that's always a cliche. I feel like sometimes that's a cop out, right? Have your parents ever said that? And do you buy it every time? Or like, well, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes that's not good enough as an excuse. So then I say, okay, what can I learn from it? Is to me a different, we didn't talk about this before, and it's not even what I wrote there, but like, what can I learn from this? It doesn't mean that I'm happy that it happened. It doesn't mean that it's only in the good things. It's like, what can I learn from this? Kind of is what I twisted early on last year. Then it kind of like stayed with me through the whole 2020.
And I like that. I feel like that like wraps up the whole conversation really nicely, of like the holiness and the unholy, of saying Jesus, God is in everything, and not taking for granted the things that he's placed in your life that you think are not spiritual. Like we have spiritual as one of the categories, then we have mental, physical, emotional. But like in reality, that spiritual is all encompassing. It's literally everything we do, because we are like spiritual beings. And so that was the overall theme of my last year. Was I was not great at the like specific spiritual time last year for whatever reason. And I really had to get into this mindset of, one, what you're doing is enough, and like recognize that and stop beating yourself up for that. Two, everything you're doing is interacting with God, and is like every conversation I'm having with somebody is speaking to one of God's children. And like once I started shifting that, it like, I don't know, it freed me of a lot of that like baggage of needing to meet those expectations, but also made me a lot more intentional with the way I'm living life, because everything is holy.
Man, that's just a whole like, oof, like I'm getting goosebumps, like, because it was like, okay, let's talk about this, and like you just like let the Spirit decide, like where it was gonna go, like let people know that like it's in everything. That's powerful and something for people to remember. How do you wrap this up? So I appreciate your time. One of the quotes that I used was from Jim Quick. One life, just one. Why are we not all running like we're on fire towards our wildest dreams? And if you want to get more connected and hear these messages and these quotes that I'm not making up the quotes. I get those from all the books I've read. And then I kind of just like, when it sticks out, I write it down. And then I kind of just have given my blurb all of last year, and now this year again I'm going through it, but this time I get to be a reader instead of a writer, and so it's kind of like hitting me in a different way. And Jeremiah mentions how it's a little bit different now that he's reading them back again, and it's just a daily reminder. So check out the description below. There's email there, Instagram. Somewhere next to me is Jeremiah's podcast from last week, so if you want to get to know him first before you listen to this one, or guess if you got this far, you've already listened to it. So go back and listen to that. Hannah Francis, Matt Boomsma. We've had lots of guests as well. So thanks. Take care.